No, I'm going well. Um, so we were going to do a World Champs review and a Paris Roubaix preview, and the week got away from me. I must say, Saturday night was all time. Sunday was all time again. Monday, Tuesday was a little bit more low key. Home late Thursday night, and then I've been sort of shacked up here at home.
Did you crack the $1,400 red that you shipped over from East End Wine Bar?
I did, the Calder Tart. I cracked it on the Wednesday night, the last night, myself and Angus Brayshaw.
Very nice. Do they how does it work with the celebrations?
Well, I thought I was going to be able to have multiple times to be able to crack it throughout the week, but Red Bull, who are a great sponsor of our club, they must love the idea of having fun and partying, because they paid for the whole 4 days, and they made us go out of the hotel all 4 nights. So there was no time to sit back and have a nice red.
Nice. Was it?
What was the best time? Was it the time in the rooms after the game when it was still raw and you're still in the kit, or was it like Wednesday when everything had sunk in?
No, so the Saturday night gets probably the top 5 events. So you try and do what everyone tells you, and like after watching grand finals, you just try and emulate what they do. So we went out on the ground, sung the song in the circle, had time with family and friends, and people who jump borders. I've found out as well within our change rooms. And then once all that happened and all left, we thought, oh, okay, that's our night. Now we're off to a nightclub. But we then went in, like when people were getting changed and whatnot, we went into the change rooms, and it was just the 70 people that were within our hub in the change rooms, and we belted out some of the best sing-along songs you'll see. And that's a bit of visions come from that. And that was the best hour. I could have flown home that night and been happy with the hour we had in that rooms.
Is the game itself a roller coaster, being in your role and being within the game, as much as it was for me on the couch?
I reckon it would have been harder for you guys on the couch, because we have immense confidence in what we're doing. So we slightly back ourselves in, probably more than the punter at home. But when Bont did kick that goal, it did cause a little bit of stress within our team. But the midfield group got together and we knew what we were doing, and one thing led to another. But I must admit, the one moment that got me the most was when my goal was called a behind, and then straight away they went down the other end and Bont kicked a goal. I'm like, shit. So I was supposed to kick my captain's goal, and then Bont just goes down the other end and kicks his captain's goal. That's a story. And that didn't matter.
And Campbell and all his doggies mates, and BT was calling Bont the greatest of all time, and they were yahooing down south before the Demons put on an absolute clinic.
I was, and that was making its way to Optus Stadium, and I said, no, I'm having none of this.
What was it like? Because I honestly thought the game was done when they were 19 points up in the grand final. It sounds like, and it appears to be. It's really hard to pin teams back at that sort of deficit, but to kick like 3 goals in 40 odd seconds at the end of that third term, and then to kick 12 goals in the fourth quarter, like it's really hard to understand how that happened. What was going on out in the park?
Well, the 3 goals at the end of the third, I was completely. I didn't contribute to any of them. Actually, I made a contest up forward for one of Bailey's goals, which unfortunately doesn't go on the stat sheet. But hey,
the ball to ground.
Yeah, well, I made the call with a little bit of help from Goody. I know that when I was on the bench, I watched Jacko ruck against Steph for about a minute. I'm like, geez, Jacko's got a bit of spring here against Steph, and maybe Steph's getting a little bit weathered late in the third quarter. I told Goody, let's leave Jacko in there. I didn't realise how good that would end up happening, that we'd get some of the cleanest centre-bounce goals, which Jacko was involved in all 3. But yeah, I felt like that was the best time for Jacko. And then what doesn't get spoken about is how good Jacko was. But then I rucked the whole last quarter and we kicked 10, but no one cares about that. Jacko's 3 minutes there was pretty good though.
What did you say anything specifically to the guys in the middle? Can you share some light?
Nothing in particular. Like when we've had moments in games throughout the last 4 games where we've been challenged, and I take it back to Geelong round 23 where they were 44 up, but they kicked 4 centre bounce goals in a row. And I remember then we just said, all right, the options are I grab it out of the ruck and just get it going forward, or I hit it straight down to like a 7 o'clock. All 3 of our boys know it's going there, and we sort of just try and lock it in. And that's basically what I said. I said, all right, we got a Geelong situation again. I'll grab it if I can. If I can't, we'll just get it going forward. And I ended up not being in there after the very next one, but I presume that's what they did.
Geez, it was a good day. But it's kind of like topical to the race we're going to talk about today. It's like it's one of the few races where it can be you can be out of position. You can be in the wrong place. You can be in the 4th group, 3rd group on the road and still come back and actually bag yourself a victory. It's not always the team that's running hot. And the D's, yeah. Would it be fair to say you're in the 3rd group, Max?
If there was some sort of beer bingo with Paris Roubaix, the amount of Matt Heyman stories there is, if you're in the 5th group, just keep trying. Matt Heyman, you'll get there. That's to be fair, we probably were just off the back of the peloton, and we were able to get back. It was a Finn peloton, and we were able to get back. I like to think that I was the Jens Voigt just at the front, getting us all back on. But it was the millennials within our team that just lit it apart. We probably were, but I like to think we were still quite comfortable winning the inside 50 count at the time. And we just knew that the game was just, they were getting some goals that we didn't really want to give up. And what actually cooked them, Bont's goal, well, I think what cooked it, Bont's goal was after a barrage of D50 stoppages for us, and they had the ball locked in their forward half. And then because he kicked the goal, the ball went back to the centre. So we kind of got a chance to get the ball out of our half and start again. Although we were another 6 points down, it just got the ball back into a position where we wanted to be.
And so is it fair to say now that you're at peak life, like you've reached the top?
I'm currently the premiership captain. That's a pretty good thing, but I'm training tomorrow. Our running program starts tomorrow. It starts again. We're already thinking about 2022. You can't be at peak for long, otherwise you get shut down pretty quickly.
Do you want to touch on Worlds a little bit before we? The last time we caught up, we were discussing if Caleb Ewan could get to the finale at Worlds. Not so
He tried.
much.
He did a pretty good job.
He did a rip-roaring job, but geez, I think we underestimated the difficulty of that circuit.
It was more so the way that they raced it. I think the circuit was hard, but when they were racing full gas with 200k to go, it was always going to be tricky for someone like Caleb to hang in there. And in the end, all the Australian boys, it was too hard for them. Michael Matthews missed the group, but I'll tell you what, it was good to see Alaphilippe win. The strongest guy won, the guy that was taking the most risks, rolling the dice. And yeah, it was good to see him win. Maybe not the strongest. I think Remco was up there as the strongest. Recently come out in the media and said a few bits and pieces, which is interesting. But overall, it was a good Worlds, I thought. If
we look back on our Caleb call, he's probably there. If he's there in the last 30k, he's a good chance. I don't think any of those last little dashes by Alaphilippe would have really cooked Caleb, but the sprinters were way off by then. And it was just the way the race was going, set up by Evenepoel and Cosnefroy, who did some of the early outtacks. I thought the French outrode the Belgium. That was said in the commentary as well, but some of the French riders that set up that Alaphilippe win was super as well. But yeah, I agree. I don't reckon he was the strongest. I reckon Remco was. I reckon Stuyven looked strong, and if Van Aert wasn't there, Stuyven probably finishes with Alaphilippe maybe. So, but he was the smart tactical team ride from French.
We talked about that Remco card being Wout van Aert's second play, or for the Belgians their second play, but it was like they put it out from the get-go. Just Remco was just on a mission, never really, unless that move was going to go to the line, he never really gave himself the opportunity to win. He was too busy proving Eddie Merckx wrong.
That's what it seemed to be. He was thinking about that comment from Merckx.
It was a very surprising top 5, I must say. Alaphilippe, you had to, and you have him in your top 5, but to have Stuyven, Van Baal, Powless, Pidcock,
Yeah.
these sort of guys in that immediate chase group. That's when I sort of knew I could have turned it off when Alaphilippe got a 10-second gap on those four. Those were the four, because the stars weren't there.
I'll give you the hot tip though. If Dylan Van Baal is running the top three of a one-day race, you know it's hard.
Yeah.
And also just the way that Alaphilippe won. I think popular winner by he's got whack. It just goes and goes again with 130% effort. It was a big ride. It was a big
Crazy
ride.
crowd as well. Crazy crowd.
What do we make of the Australians' performance? Matthews thereabouts in the finale. Stannard in a good move, but doing a heap of work and kind of went a bit hard. It looks like. What do we take on their efforts?
Yeah, like we said, Caleb did a good ride. I think Matthews did his best too. It was good to see Stannard being active. You're probably right. He did a little bit too much, and it seems like when he does get into these sort of moves, he does like to contribute a fair bit. But it's still good to be getting into those positions. So for the future, I think he's going to be a good one-day rider for world championship circuits like that in the future. But overall, it was a pretty underwhelming team performance, you could say.
If you do see, you've seen Nizzolo in the final group there that did a lot of work for Colbrelli, and that's why he dropped off. But Nizzolo being in the final group, you can somehow expect Michael or Caleb to be somewhere around there as well.
Mm.
Do they struggle as a team, the Australians?
I guess you could say that. I mean, Cadell won in 2009. Apparently, that was a good team performance. I don't really remember the race that well. Guerin's has been on the podium a couple of times. Michael Matthews has been close a couple of times too, but those were when they were both co-leaders. And it was again similar this world. It seemed like it was kind of Caleb/Matthews, and at the same time, you need to have a course, and you also need to have the cattle to really be in the thick of the race. And you can say that Matthews wasn't going to beat Alaphilippe or Van Aert, and it was too hard for Caleb. So are we maybe being a little bit too hard on them as a group, perhaps?
I do know Alex always throws to me and you, Campbell, to comment on the Australians.
I have noticed that he doesn't want to
Keeping
burn
his
he
ties
doesn't want to burn his CA internal
Got to
bridges.
keep my contacts close to my chest. Well, is talking about having cattle for the race. Just CC Cycling Australia next year, flat track, slightly uphill drag. See Ewan, come at me.
Yeah.
On to Roubaix.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a race in between that was commentated in a different language that Roglic won, but
he's still going.
Seems like he's going well, which is good.
Yeah, the guy never stops. Speaking of guys that never stop, it seemed like the Vans haven't really stopped since I can't remember. They've just been going all year.
Well, has it cost them? If we go back to an early podcast done at headquarters, we said the Vans would be unstoppable. And now if you really look back at it, it's almost been Colbrelli's year. Colbrelli seems like the unstoppable force. Have the Vans come back to the bunch, or have they just overdone it?
I think they might have overdone it a little bit. They've been going, like you said, they've been going all year, and it's not like they've fallen off the cliff. You know, Van der Poel was third at Roubaix. Van Aert was seventh. He was second at the TT at Worlds last week. He was active in the World. So I think they've just had such a long season and been at such a high level and have their standards so high that if they don't win, we see it as a failure, and we start saying, have they come back to the group? So I think it's probably just that they've had a massive season. What are we, October, and they're still going full gas and still competing. So especially Van Aert, he seems to have been going like you wouldn't believe all season. Van der Poel went to the mountain bike at the Olympics, had a little time off after the tour to prepare for that. So he's maybe had a little bit of a lesser load, but yeah, Wood Van Aert it's been going wild all year.
But they were seen as unbeatable. They were seen as you couldn't even get in their group. And then, like, if you had told me that Van der Poel's in a final three group and doesn't win the sprint in a Paris Roubaix at the start of the year, I'd been like, that's no chance unless somehow
Yeah.
somehow Damar's got to the final sprints or something. Like it's just genuinely, it seems mind-boggling that they're not dominated. I get Van Aert does a lot of work and has a bit of tactical stuff. He rides a lot at the front and he just seems to cook himself. But Van der Poel to not win that.
Yeah, I mean, Van der Poel got rolled up in a 2-up sprint by Asgreen at the end of Flanders too.
Yep.
Is he just getting carried away with his Amstel Gold Spec win where he rode 20 Ks on the last front, the final 20 Ks, and then won the bunch kick while leading the bunch kick out? Like, is he just, he's never had to like pace himself whatsoever. So like, even you talk about the Flanders getting beaten by Amstel, he's doing so much work. He's doing all the work. He's never the guy to not do a tap. And he's the same. They're both the same, the two vans, which is why they're so exciting and animating. Because if they're in the move, it generally goes. But is it time that they need to play the Colbrelli card a bit more?
I don't want them to, because
do I.
You see stage 2 of the tour and you see what Van der Poel decides to do by collecting bonus seconds just because he can. But yeah, they've brought Colbrelli into their group now by the way they ride.
Yep. Back to the start. That must have been a horrible start to be involved in. Like, I was sitting on the couch uncomfortable, just like this nervous energy in the group, people squealing around corners. And I think it wasn't too many major crashes, but that crash where the one of the FDJ riders went down, and there's just like little bits and pieces going on everywhere. And it looked nervous energy at the highest level.
Well, that would have started in the days leading up, knowing that it was going to be a wet race. Seeing the women's race, that was carnage too, just going in a straight line on the cobbles and people just slipping out. So like in the bus in the night before, everyone would have been thinking about that. And then, there's a lot of, I'm not sure how long there is, but 100 odd K of bitumen before the cobbles. So that time is time to get nervous as well. And it was pissing rain, a little bit of wind, a group of 30 odd going up the road. So I think when they actually got to the cobbles, that's when everyone would have actually relaxed. The build up to the event is always worse than the event itself. So I was saying to you, Alex, on the text during the week, that would have been a fun last 100K to be in. But the lead up to that last 100K would have been the worst possible lead in ever.
Yeah. Did you enjoy the lead in, Max, the grand final? 1, 2, 3 days out?
Yeah, I did. The most nervous I got was when I came out and watched the grand final entertainment. So probably would be like the lead in 100K. That's when I came out and watched John Butler, and I'm like, this is a bit crazy for me. It's a full house already. 2 hours before we play, I might just go sit in a cool room by myself, which I did and sort of worked. But yeah, the nervous energy that would have been created. I've never rode too much in the wet, and let alone on cobbles, so I don't know the exact feeling of what they're about to go through. And plus, all of us were crazy about it. We're like, oh, this is going to be the best Paris Roubaix ever, which created another level of anxiety for them, because they know how hard it is, but then they know how good it is for people to watch. So yeah, it would have been crazy levels of anxiety, especially the last 100K. The first 100K.
Yeah. And we saw a big move that ended up being established off the front. Good Australian presence, a good kind of mix of teams, and that kind of set the basis for the rest of the race. That breakaway was kind of always thereabouts.
Big names. It wasn't a standard Paris-Roubaix breakaway. There was a GVA in there as a previous winner, obviously out of form. There was a Durbridge. There was obviously the bloke who ended up finishing second in Vermeesh. Like there was some crazy names within that group. It must have made even more anxiety within the group.
Yeah. But in the last couple of years, we've seen like those groups go up the road and 1 or 2 guys survive from the breakaway and getting into the finale. So especially on a wet day, you can just stay in the front. Luke Durbridge was talking about on their backstage pass, just staying in front of the race, staying out of trouble. So obviously that was the message from a lot of DSs at the start, to just go up the road, stay in front of the carnage. And I mean, Vermeesh, he got really close to the win from just being in the front all day and staying out of trouble. So yeah, it made for an exciting race, that's for sure.
Funny, anyone who was getting caught by the group was coming back with a clean jersey, which the group must have hated the fact that these guys have hardly been in the mud at all.
And you talk about Campbell, like everyone wanting to be ahead of the race, being in front of the race. It must be one of the hardest breakaways to get in, because it's one of the only breakaways of the year where you have a genuine, if not equal playing terms as the main group. It's not an advantage to be in the main group. And
yeah, well, exactly like Max said, guys like GVA were going up the road. So Luke Rowe, Gianni, you know, if things had gone his way, maybe he could have won. So yeah,
good Australian presence though. I think Harry Sweeney just topped off a ripper year making that move, and being present there. Rob Stannard again, another solid ride to put his name on the World Tour cycling calendar, and also Durbo there. Like it was a good presence from the Australian boys.
Yeah.
And then I guess it just kind of whittled down from there. It was like people just splattered across the road, groups, like the main group. At one point, the breakaway was bigger than the main group.
Yeah, when they were showing the peloton, there was like 20 guys in the peloton.
Yeah, and we're just waiting for the
like 100K to go.
Yeah. That was the ultimate time to tune in, from about 120 to 90 in that little 30K where they were just slowly getting the peloton numbers down. Favourites dropping off. Sagan dropped off. De Klerk, like some big, some of the big quick step boys were dropping off.
Yeah, Sagan unlucky.
Some crazy people. Sagan very unlucky, and like I said to you before, Alex, I was slightly keen on Sagan before the race. I thought for the first time we're going to see the Vans v Sagan, which I think everyone was excited for, but it just didn't end up happening.
Yep. And then also we kind of got that first-hand experience of seeing the guys riding the cobbles. Like it looked almost uncontrollable. Like you were just willing to, you had to be accepting that you're going to drift, you're going to squirm, and they were just trying to find their way through these cobble sections, which are genuinely hard in the dry. And then you're thrown on top of this slippery conditions, puddles, mud.
It was completely out of the rider's control. You just saw sometimes they were just riding and just whoosh, just slide out. And if you're caught behind those people, it's the end of your day. And I don't remember who the rider was. It was a Portuguese rider. He was just riding along and then just got deleted into a ditch. Like we shouldn't be laughing, but just how quickly he disappeared off the road and how abruptly it just showed how dangerous it was out there.
Not long after that leads me to the worst crash on the whole thing, I think, was when Luke Rowe couldn't keep his bike straight and just went straight into, I think it was Mads Pedersen, who was riding superbly. I mean, I in my head, I'm like, surely there's a due diligence from Luke Rowe, like when F1 cars get overlapped and they just pull to the side. I don't think he could control his bike, and poor Pedersen just went straight into him.
Well, there was a article on Cycling News today that Luke Rowe would hit back at people that had messaged him saying, you know, what are you doing cutting into the middle of Arenberg Forest? And he said, well, I had a flat tire. I was trying to stay to the right. And if you think otherwise, this is a quote, you can go fuck yourself. So he was obviously adamant that there was nothing he could do. He was in the right. No, I mean, he wears his heart on his sleeve, Luke Rowe. He's not afraid to hurt anyone by his words. And
you look at it from his perspective too, and from an Ineos perspective, like Gianni hauling ass. And before Gianni really made his presence felt, Luke Rowe was the one that was like ripping that breakaway. So he was obviously in super nick before he had a mechanical. And that kind of started the mechanical and crash issues for Team Ineos. They were in a ripper position. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, those are two guys that could be in like the final from the peloton. You know, they could get to that last 30K and be there with the big names like Van der Poel and Van Aert, but they threw themselves up the road. I'm sure we'll get to this later, but yeah, Gianni was very unlucky, I think. Hmm. You feel for Rowe too, because this is like, it's like the Heyman opportunity. He spends your whole career doing the job for people, and this is the kind of race that is of equal scale to what you're doing the work for others to win. But also, this is your opportunity. This is your time to ride. You can put yourself in the move. You can put yourself in the opportunity. So yeah, it was a pretty tough scenario to see. Both him and eventually Gianni wiped out of the race after being in super positions. But gee, you have to feel for Gianni. Oof.
I don't think he wins.
You don't think he
for him,
wins?
but I think the strongest man of the race won. Every time the vans went, Sonny Colbrelli was on their rear wheel. Maybe, I mean, I've heard Jasper Stuyven in the public saying he was the strongest man in the race. I don't know where he got that.
It was Yves Lampard.
Oh, it was Lampard. That's right.
Yeah. He said he had 3 punches, and there was a time there when Van der Poel really started to get stuck in that Lampard was the one that was following. And then the next time we saw, he was nowhere to be seen. So maybe he did get a puncher when he was trying to follow Van der Poel. But yeah, it's pretty brave to come out and say that I was the strongest when you come in for 5th.
I'm a Colbrelli man, so I've always got bias towards him. But I did think he was the strongest.
Yeah.
And also the smartest as well. He got himself up the road. He was ahead of the race. And then when Van der Poel came up, he was a little bit fresh. And he was doing his turns with Van der Poel, but he wasn't, doing 50-50 chops with him. That would be silly to do that. So I'm very happy to see Colbrelli win too.
Especially when you got 2 other guys that are willing to do the chop for you. Like it wasn't like that. He needed to put that amount of effort in to keep the gap out. It looked like at that point the gap was pretty locked in, but it also, I didn't see this part, but I've read reports that he actually did a significant amount of work to get across to that move initially too, which was a bit of a summary of the race. You had to lock in to know where each group was at and who was doing what, because there was just people everywhere.
Yeah.
Do you think Gianni was going to win if he didn't have the puncher and then the crash?
I think so. There was a big block there, like circa 10 kilometers, where he was just holding that gap at a minute 12.
Yeah.
And the puncher would have just really messed with your head. And then when we saw him, I don't know if it was the new bike, but once he got on that new bike, he was slipping and sliding everywhere. Campbell, you touched on before how hard it was to manage yourself on those cobbles, but that was wild. Like, I know he went the time that he decked it. He was literally going in a straight line. Like he was right in the right part of the road.
Maybe it was just concentration. By that point, he would have had 230 Ks in the legs, been by himself for a good hour. I think we forget about that element of cycling, and especially on wet cobblestones, having to be focused for the 6 hours. Maybe that's what it was, but I don't think the tyres would have had any different pressure. If anything, it would have been good getting on clean equipment, being a little bit faster. But you're right, he just did not look the same once he got onto that spare bike. But I don't know. I'm not going to say that he was going to win, but I think it would have been very, very close. And the 3 behind might have started racing for second. And I guess we'll never know. It doesn't matter.
I think there would have been 90% of cycling fans out there knowing that Gianni Moscon isn't the most liked Andy ride for Team Ineos that would have been happy that he fell off his bike as well.
and that he's heading to Astana next year just to top things off. Do the sprint finish? Anything else you really want to delve into before we get to the final few laps of the track?
Just quick step generally. We always rant and rave how strong they are in these classics, and they've always got good numbers, but they never really seemed like they were affecting the race, making an impact at all, really, which is very, very rare for them.
And also, this is like their kind of scenario, like messy, uncontrollable, no clear leader, but just strength in numbers.
Obviously Lampard was the strongest in the race, but just had some bad luck. So maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, I thought the race was controlled quite well by Jumbo early, and then Bahrain late with Henrik Hausler doing a fair bit of work. And then
I know,
and then
with a
also,
top 10.
and then also randomly, my least liked team had like the most numbers in Israel Cycling Nation, had like
Yeah.
4 riders in like the final group.
Boivon, he was super unlucky with that crash. He was looking super strong with that Colbrelli and Van der Poel group, and just crashed onto the left-hand side. And he had Tom Van Haesbroek doing a lot of work, so he was able to sit in the wheels for a long period of time. And I thought that he was looking really good. And when they caught Moscon, I thought he could have been dangerous, but he crashed. So that's part of Roubaix, staying on your bike.
Yeah. Oh, there'd be some sore boys. Like the amount of times that some of those guys hit the deck. It seemed like Sepp Van Mark spent the entire day on the ground, just like every time the camera cut to him, just Sepp Van Mark crashed out of their next group.
Yeah.
Simon Clark took a brutal crash as well, and he was
He
riding
did
well.
in the forest. It was a real Simon Clark day. Filthy, wet, riding good position. You never know your luck. But can we just touch on Heinrich again? Top 10 in Roubaix.
How old is Heinrich now?
Must be 37 odd, I reckon. I think he's been doing a lot of cyclocross. He represented Australia
37.
at Worlds in the cyclocross, so he's obviously got a lot of skills in the mud, in the rain. But I tell you what, I know he loves the classics and he always gets up for it, but I did not expect to see a top 10 from Heino.
Yeah, and play a genuine role in his team's victory.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
My tip for the Worlds was just 1 week early, and Christophe Laporte. He beat Van Aert in the 1-up sprint in Paris Roubaix. So I was just 1 week too early on Christophe Laporte.
It was Laporte that was using his back foot as a brake at one point.
Yeah, I saw that.
He's going to Jumbo next year, I believe, Laporte, which is
It's
going
gonna
to
be nice.
strengthen their classics team in a big way.
Yeah, Van Aert would be pretty happy about that. Just having another guy for the finale.
Yeah.
Will it help those guys or hinder those guys? Talking about the time of year that the race was on, it was a rare opportunity for some of those guys to go at Roubaix, because normally it's if you're doing any of the Grand Tours, it's too much risk to ride Roubaix before that. But will it really matter for these guys what time of year it is? The Vans?
I don't think so. Like for me, and I think for a lot of the peloton, Roubaix is like it's the one-day race. So I don't think they can be thinking about snapping a collarbone and not being able to do the tour or affecting whatever. I don't see the date being an issue at all for those blokes.
Yeah. And then the finale itself, couple laps of the track, Sonny looked to ride it perfectly in the end, but not only like Vermeersch was good. I really feel for him. He was really good. Like I know we don't talk about him being young and whatnot, but he went long. He went Heyman, but he almost gapped him.
Do you think that little attack in the last couple of K might have stung the sprint a little bit? Maybe he wasn't backing his sprint in as much as maybe he should have.
Well, but he was almost doing a hedge one way, but didn't go all in one way. So he didn't go all in for the attack, but then didn't go all in for the sprint. It was kind of like you got to go one way or the other.
I think you made the right decision having an attack. If I was in that situation going up against Van der Poel and Colbrelli, you know that they're super quick, so you have to try your luck. But at the end of 6 hours sprinting, it's completely different.
You can only imagine what the DS would have been saying in that group with Colbrelli and Van der Poel. It would have been make your own luck, go early.
Yeah.
Now we can go back to the bus and say I should have waited and just gone up for a 1-up sprint.
Yeah. You saw him smacking the bars and you're like, you're only young and you should be happy with second. But at the same time, like going for the win at Roubaix, like there's every chance that he'll never get that opportunity again in his career. So disappointing, but at the same time, like, was he 20, 21 or 22, first year pro, and to get a podium at Roubaix and be in the thick of that final was very impressive.
And Sonny was a deserving winner.
Absolutely.
Like after his year, after how that race played out, after how he rode that race, it was
What
good
a year! Just the Euro win, the Tour de France, the show he put on at the Tour de France, getting rated mid Tour de France at his hotel, which will happen every event Bahrain go to. I think
They've had some season, haven't they?
some season Bahrain have had, and it could keep going. Who know? They've got a pretty good list for Lombardy with Lander and Padun, and I think Hagee's going, so it could still go, but. A worthy winner, and good to see Lotto doing something without Caleb as well.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time they've been relevant in a race without Caleb, so good to see that.
Yeah, that's big for them because, like you said, not like for a Belgian team to show up to be able to start hitting these Cobble Classics with a genuine leader and someone that can feature in the back end of the race is so important.
Yeah.
Wood Van Aert, anything else to add on him?
I think we saw it at Worlds and we saw it again here. He's just looked a little bit cooked.
Yeah. Time to put
obviously.
The feet up.
Yeah, you can still get away with it in a TT, which he showed, going pretty close to winning Worlds. But yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising to see him go for Lombardia, just because his 85% is still a good chance of winning. But actually, the way Remco is going at the moment, I think it's going to be hard for anyone to beat him.
Oh, it makes it. I mean, we're not going to Lombardy yet, but if you just have a look at that start list, it is so intriguing between 6 riders.
When is the race?
I think it's
weekend?
I think
it's the same time as the last two. Sunday, 8 o'clock our time.
Yeah, nice. Last hurrah for the season. Did we rate having Roubaix at the back end? It's a little Worlds Roubaix.
It definitely hurts Lombardy.
Yeah.
That's pretty clear because the vans aren't going. I don't think, but I think Roubaix in a time slot like this has kept the cycling season alive, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it will obviously go back to April next year, but I didn't mind the October time slot. Off the back of Worlds and then Lombardy, you're right, Max. It kind of creates a nice little 3-week block at the end of the season to keep the interest going.
Yep. Any final comments?
I had a best on for the day who ended up coming 12th or 13th, B&B Hotels, Turgis.
Yeah.
He was actually really good in the Worlds as well. I like him. He just rides at the front and creates his own luck. Unfortunately, wasn't there in the finish, but he was my best off of the day. I put a saver on Colbrelli, Campbell. I had money on Saga, but my savers were on Colbrelli and my Horrocks.
I was gonna say, was there any little wagers on?
Yeah, there was. I had a miss with the Worlds. I didn't like Alaphilippe, but I came back strongly with Colbrelli and Lombardi. I don't know what I'm doing yet. Let's get a little sneak. Lombardi is literally it's a quick step of Alaphilippe and Evenepoel, and then UAE have Hershey and Pogacar, and then Roglic's in the middle there. It's a crazy sort of tactical race.
Yeah. Just quickly, just flipping back to Roubaix, what was Colbrelli paying?
41s, Campbell. They were all crazy about the vans.
That's value. That's sniffing out the value.
Yep.
We confident? We confident heading like with 20K to go? We like, all right.
I was devastated when Sagan went down because I thought Sagan was my one. But when I saw Colbrelli riding how well he was, like matching wheel for wheel with some of these big dogs, I'm like, he's getting over these cobbles good, and his legs. His legs were fine in Worlds, and his legs were good in Euros. That he's going to be there.
Yeah. Do we want to have a little punt on our top 3 for this weekend?
Would love nothing more.
They're talking about that the Ducati Quickstep squad though. Geez, I think if they weren't felt in Roubaix on the weekend, their presence will be felt in this race. This is a hot start list.
I even missed one who I'm going to put in my top 3 with Almeida as well.
Yeah. I was just looking at that, and the way Remco's going, he won a race last night by minute 40 solo. Alaphilippe with the rainbows back on. He's going to be hunting. It's hard to go past those 3. with not going into any other teams. Ben O'Connor's back in business. This is sort of a good race for him. Vlasov, Schachman, Guillaume Martin, Thibaut Pinot, my man.
Schachman weirdly doing a Paris Roubaix just for warm up.
Yeah. I'll just go and ride a 260k muddy cobbled race before Lombardia.
Pino's still riding a bike, Campbell.
Yeah, he is.
He's actually been finishing within the main groups in his last couple of races. He's been riding okay.
Could be a little dark horse with the pressure off.
No, well, he's not in my top 3. He's not in my top 10, to be fair.
Do we expect something from Team Bike Exchange? Had a pretty slow year, and they've got a nice squad here. Yates, Chavez, Howson, Kangert, Niev, Schultz, and Zietz. It's a good list if they're all got good legs.
Schultzy for a late move.
I mean, Simon Yates, though, is a realistic favourite. Let's be honest.
Both Yateses there certainly makes you look that potentially they could be there in the group. They haven't been there all the second half of the year, definitely. Disappointing Olympics, disappointing at, I think they were at the Euros or the Worlds, one of the two. But I can't go past. I can't go past the top 5. I reckon it's just going to be a genuinely good race. I'm going Remco the win, Primoz second, and then I reckon UAE stuff it up, and I'm going to put Mollema in for third.
Mollema, he does
UAE,
love a one-day race at the end of the season.
Yeah.
UAE are a pretty hot team with Pog, Formulo, Hershey, Micah, McNulty, Ulisi. It's a good squad.
I just reckon they stuff it up. Pog's not going as well as I thought he'd be at this time of year.
Why is Pog still going?
Yeah,
Just
he
hanging in there.
did the World's TT. Why did he do the World TT?
It doesn't make sense, does it?
It's not July.
It does not make sense.
Cambo, do you want to go at a top 3?
Yeah, I do.
To give me some time to think about my top 3.
I'll go Remco for the win, Alaphilippe for second, and then Roglic for third. Nothing wild in that pick.
Yeah, Alaphilippe for the win. Fresh rainbow bands on his back. I think he'll be riding high. And that's really only because you said Remco. Hershey on the list just to start to channel his form from a couple of years ago. And then Roglic just always rock solid. He'll help himself to third.
Yeah. Smokies.
Well, the Smokies, Almeida and Mollema are my 2.
Okay. I'm going to go with Storer as my Smoky.
Well, he would be lead for DSM. I can't see them riding for anyone else.